Hi, I'm Cavin with your go-to for wedding content, advice, and inspiration. And today I'm going to be sharing with you guys some tips for how to choose and more specifically narrow down your wedding venue choice. In this tip video, I'm going to be assuming that you've already narrowed down to venues that are within your budget and can hold all of the amount of people that you need to hold. So we're already going to be assuming those 2 points. So you've already done a little bit of research. I would say the first thing you need to be doing when you are trying to narrow down your venues is looking at reviews. The Knot is a great place to look for reviews on venues because those are going to be reviews specifically on the wedding services. This is especially handy if your venue also doubles as a hotel or as a restaurant, and the reviews on, let's say, Yelp or Google might have a lot of reviews specifically about the hotel service itself, but not about how the wedding service is run, because those could be two very different sets of reviews. I would say you need to be looking at a place that has at least 4 stars. Anything less than that, I would not do. Now, if they don't have any reviews, and if they're new, you can take that chance. You can be one of the first people to try out that venue, but just know that you might be taking a risk. Perhaps ask around for some recommendations. Does anybody know the people who are starting this venue? Maybe they're people who are established in the industry under other categories. Maybe they were like a stationary person before and they were really good at that. So you can always ask around and see, but that's my recommendation. 4 stars and above for sure. Now, my next tip is to make sure that you are considering things like, can you stay overnight at the venue? Is that important to you? If you cannot stay overnight, is there a hotel within 10-15 minutes? I feel like you want to consider something like that, because if there is travel time, then you are losing out on photography time. And if you are somebody who really cares about your photography time, then you want to make sure that you are optimizing for that photo time, because time that your photographer and you spent in the car is time not spent being able to take photos, which, if it's just 5 to 10 minutes, not a big deal. But if you are having to drive 30 minutes from your hotel where you got your getting ready pictures to your venue, that's a lot of time not spent being photographed. Also, too, on that note, is the getting ready space at the venue, is it pretty? Is it a place that you want to be photographed? If not, do they have a pretty space outside that you can step out to put on your suit jacket or to put on your dress, where your photographer can photograph you in natural light? Also, something to consider. I know I already talked about making sure it's in budget, and that can be a complex topic. When you consider budget, you want to think about not only is it in budget, but are you actually going to be blowing your entire budget on this venue? Meaning, if you choose to spend a huge chunk of your wedding budget on this venue, are you not going to have a lot left over for categories like photography, band, things that you actually really care about? So essentially, you're going to be blowing the whole budget on just the location, and you're going to have to basically go for scraps on categories that you really value, and you have nothing left over for it. So if that might be happening with a venue you really like, I would recommend that you consider a Friday or Sunday if the venue has lower costs for those days. Another thing to consider with your venue choice is, how are the food options? Do they have a good looking menu, or do you not really like the food options they're presenting to you? Do you not think your guests are going to like it? That's really important, that your guests actually like the food at the venue. So if your venue also allows outside catering, make sure they're not restricting you to a list of people whose food you're also going to not like. So that is something you really want to consider, because food is a lot of times what guests are going to remember from the wedding. So make sure it is good food. And also, if it is something like a restaurant or a hotel where you can go sample the food beforehand, even if it's not the exact same food as the wedding, that's a great idea to taste it out and make sure you actually like the way it tastes before you choose it as your wedding venue. This next tip has to do with photography, and I did touch on this in one of my recent tips videos, and that is portrait locations. When you are touring venues, make sure that if portraits, like couples portraits, group portraits, are a priority for you, that there are actually a variety of beautiful portrait backdrops at your venue. Now, what constitutes as a good portrait location? It needs to be something with a beautiful backdrop where your photographer actually has the room to get back several feet to be able to take your picture. Do they have room to fit just the couple there? Or do they have room to also be able to fit your entire wedding party and your family there? Know that even if you find just a few portrait locations, the lighting may lower the amount of locations that are actually eligible on the wedding day. So if you're only finding like 2 pretty locations, that could go down to just 1 on the wedding day due to lighting. If you have a wedding venue where it has really tight pathways and only like 1, maybe 2 open spaces, that is going to be a very difficult place to shoot in. There are some venues like that in San Diego where the whole venue is just little sidewalks and there's just 2 open spots. So we only have 2 open spots. Now, if this is a venue that you have to choose or it's your must-have for some reason, know that you might be very limited to be shooting there for portraits, but is there a place nearby that you can walk to or take a 5-minute drive to and go shoot portraits there with you and your fiance or your group? Or if you just simply don't have that option, are you willing to have a portrait session of you and your new husband or your new wife on a different day getting back in your wedding attire? You will have to pay for this, but if that's something that you could not achieve on your wedding day, going to a separate location might be something you need to do in order to get those portraits that are important to you. A lot of venues have a preferred vendors list, but it's really just a suggestion when it comes to most categories, like, hey, here are the people we like. You can hire them, you can not hire them, whatever. It's just a suggestion. But there are some venues who literally force you to hire their people. Now, sometimes it's just catering, but some venues will force you to hire very personal type people like photographers or planners or even a DJ. And for me, those are very personality-based vendors. And I would not ever choose a venue that would force me to hire someone like that, because at least for me, I care very deeply about that kind of vendor. And for me, that is a very personal choice. And I would never choose a place that forces me to hire something like that. I want full creative control over hiring that type of vendor. Another really big thing, especially if you live in a location that has a lot of rain, is you really need to consider the rain plan when it comes to your venue, and this should factor into which venue you choose. For example, if you know that your venue has an interior space, but you absolutely hate the way it looks and you were planning on having everything outdoors, perhaps that's not the right venue for you to choose if you live in a city that is highly likely to rain and a tent being rented to have outdoors in the rain is not an option. Now, if you are choosing a venue and your rain plan is a tent and you can have that on hold in case it rains, that's a great rain plan and you could do that venue no problem. But again, if you really just don't like the idea of taking all your portraits inside at that venue because you hate the way it looks inside, you hate the way the reception space looks inside, you really don't like the idea of having the ceremony wherever you would have to have the ceremony in there, don't pick that venue if it's highly likely to rain. Choose a different spot. Another thing to consider is one venue you might think would be cheaper because on paper it looks cheaper, but perhaps it comes with 0 rentals compared to this other venue that on paper looks more expensive, but it comes with all of the tables, it comes with all of the chairs, it comes with linens for the tables, and it comes with your flatware and your plates and all of those things. So sometimes you really have to think about what is actually included and factor that into your cost, because bringing in all of your rentals can really start to add up when you need all of those things to actually seat your guests and have them eating with utensils and things like that. And my last tip for you guys is to do a site visit if you can, because sometimes it is really hard to tell what the venue looks like based on the photos that the venue people choose for their website. Now, if you cannot do a site visit, you can maybe ask if they can do a video visit with you. If you cannot do that, maybe ask your planner if they can do a site visit and show you a video while they're walking around, or if you have family that lives in the area, have them do a visit. And worst case scenario, what I would recommend if you can't do any of that is to look up wedding photographers' blogs of the venue, because hopefully they will show different parts of the wedding day taken at that venue and at least some wide shots of the space, so you can at least see how different real weddings look at that venue to get an idea of what it is like to be there. So that is going to be really helpful for you to imagine the space as it would be on your day. So I hope this is helpful in choosing your venue, narrowing down, and finding the right space for you. If you guys enjoyed this, leave a like, leave a comment, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!